Now, as you are willing and able, please join in our opening hymn, number 188 in the gray hymnal.
Come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is the caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is the caravan of despair. Come, yet again come.
Our affirmation today can be found in the gray hymnal. It is number 419. This is a unison reading. Look to this day, for it is life, the very life of life. In its brief course lie all the verities and realities of your existence, the bliss of growth, the glory of action, the splendor of beauty, for yesterday is but a dream, and tomorrow is only a vision. But today, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Look well, therefore, to this day.
Good morning. How are we all doing today? Good. If I could have anybody young or who's feeling particularly young at heart today, come on over here. We're going to have a story. Yeah, it's a good one. So first, I need someone who's going to help me turn pages, because I can't hold a microphone and turn pages at the same time. Yeah? Okay. All right, so you want to just hold the book open for me? That'll be great. A+ page holding. All right. So in the middle of New York City, there is a great big park called Central Park. Children love to play there. It has a toy boat pond where they can sail their boats. It has a carousel to ride on in the summer and an ice rink to skate on in the winter. Sounds pretty good, huh? Best of all, it has its very own zoo. Every day, families of all kinds go to visit the animals that live there. Children and their parents aren't the only families at the zoo. The animals make families of their own. There are red panda bear families with mothers, fathers, and furry red panda bear cubs. So cute. There are monkey dads and monkey moms raising noisy monkey babies. There are toad families and toucan families and cotton top tamarin families too. And in the penguin house, there are penguin families. Every year at the very same time, the girl penguins start noticing the boy penguins, and the boy penguins start noticing the girl penguins. And when the right girl and the right boy find each other, they become a couple. Turn the page. Thank you. Two penguins in the penguin house were a little bit different. One was named Roy and the other was named Silo. Roy and Silo were both boys, but they did everything together. They bowed to each other and walked together. They sang to each other. I don't think penguins are very good singers. And they swam together. Wherever Roy went, Silo went. They didn't spend much time with the girl penguins, and the girl penguins didn't spend much time with them. Instead, Roy and Silo wound their necks around each other. Their keeper, Mr. Gramsay, noticed the two penguins and thought to himself, "They must be in love." Roy and Silo watched how the other penguins made a home, so they built a nest of stones for themselves. Every night, Roy and Silo slept there together, just like the other penguin couples. And every morning, Roy and Silo woke up together. But one day, they saw that the other couples could do something they couldn't do. The mama penguin would lay an egg, and she and the papa penguin would take turns keeping the egg warm, until finally it would hatch, and then there would be a baby penguin. Roy and Silo had no egg to sit on, nothing to keep warm, no baby chick to feed and cuddle and love. Their nest was nice, but a little empty. One day, Roy found something that looked like what the other penguins were sitting on. He brought it to their nest. It was only a rock. But Silo carefully sat on it, and sat, and sat. When he got sleepy, he slept, and when Silo was done sleeping and sitting, he swam and Roy sat. Day after day, Silo and Roy sat on the rock. But nothing happened. Then Mr. Gramsay got an idea. He found an egg that needed to be cared for, and he brought it into Roy and Silo's nest. Roy and Silo knew just what to do. They had been practicing. They moved the egg to the center of their nest, and every day they turned it so each side stayed warm. Some days Roy sat while Silo went for food, and other days it was Silo's turn to take care of their egg. They sat in the morning, they sat at night, they sat through lunchtime and swim time and supper. They sat at the beginning of the month, and they sat at the end of the month, and they sat all the days in between. Until one day, they heard a sound coming from inside their egg. Peep, 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 it said. Roy and Silo called back, "Squawk, squawk." "Peep, peep," answered the egg. Crack! Out came their very own baby. She had fuzzy white feathers and a funny black beak. Now, Roy and Silo were fathers. "We'll call her Tango," Mr. Gramsay decided, because it takes two to make a tango. Roy and Silo taught Tango how to sing for them when she was hungry. I still don't think penguins are good singers. They fed her food from their beaks. They snuggled her in their nest at night. Tango was the very first penguin in the zoo to have two daddies. Soon, Tango grew strong enough to leave the nest. Roy and Silo took her for a swim, just like all the other penguin families. And all the children who came to the zoo could see Tango and her two fathers playing in the penguin house with the other penguins. "Hooray, Roy! Hooray, Silo! Welcome, Tango!" they cheered. At night, the three penguins returned to their nest. There, they snuggled together, and like all the other penguins in the penguin house, and all the other animals in the zoo, and all the families in the big city around them, they went to sleep. The end. Cute story, huh? Yeah? There are all kinds of families, aren't there? We know all kinds of families. I tell my cats all the time. that just because our family is one lady and two cats, it doesn't mean that other families can't look different. Some houses even have dogs. They're very scandalized. So the congregation has a special song that they're going to sing, and we're going to stay here and listen to it one time through, and then we'll go to our classes. So stay sitting. I'm going to give this microphone back. There will be singing, then there will be going.
Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. Unitarian Universalism is a progressive religious tradition, and our church strives to be inclusive and welcoming. Our mission is to grow together in spirit, reason, fellowship, and justice. If you are here for the first or second time, we especially thank you for being with us. We warmly invite you to stay after the service for coffee and conversation so that we may get to know you. We will be having our potluck too, so whether or not you brought food, please do stay and enjoy the company and the food. And we're going to be having that inside, so if people after the service can help to move the chairs out of the way and get the table set up, that would be fabulous. Now, there's always a lot going on in our community, and one thing that I want to give a special shout out to is for all the people who helped with Resource Day yesterday. Resource Day brought together 30 or more providers in the Livermore Valley for people who are homeless or struggling, and it was a really big success, and lots of people from our church showed up to help with that. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and mention that. So there is always a lot that's going on in our community. Announcements and information can be found inside of your order of service. We welcome your involvement in our community wherever you are on your spiritual journey. If you have a joy or a sorrow you would like to share, you may write it down on the insert. You may then hand it to either myself or to Stephanie during the sung meditation. Now, we come from a tradition which teaches that there is a spark of the divine within everyone. In the spirit of that heritage, I invite you to greet the holy in our midst by turning to the person to your left or your right and welcoming them here this morning. Greetings. No problem. Our ancient wisdom comes from the Gospel according to Mark. It's number 432 in the gray hymnal, and I would invite us to read it together. If someone would scatter seed on the ground and would sleep and rise night and day, the seed would sprout and grow. The earth produces of itself first the blade, then the ear, then the full corn in the ear. When the grain is ripe, the harvest has come.
Our modern reading comes from Harvey Milk, the first openly gay man to be elected to public office. My name is Harvey Milk, and I am here to recruit you. I want to recruit you for the fight to preserve your democracy. Brothers and sisters, you must come out. Come out to your parents. Come out to your friends, if indeed they are your friends. Come out to your neighbors. Come out to your fellow workers. Once and for all, let's break down the myths and destroy the lies and distortions. For your sake, for their sake, for the sake of all the youngsters who have been scared by the votes for discrimination from Briggs to Eugene. On the Statue of Liberty, it says, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free." In the Declaration of Independence, it is written, "All men are created equal and endowed with certain inalienable rights." So, to all the bigots out there, no matter how hard you try, you can never erase those words from the Declaration of Independence. No matter how hard you try, you can never chip those words from the face of the Statue of Liberty. This is what America is. Love it or leave it. So ends the reading.
Feast or famine with milestones. Sometimes we have a lot and sometimes we have few, and today I have a lot. So the first one is from Stephanie Fish, and it's acknowledging that her daughter Tegan is coming home tomorrow, and she will be interning with the Livermore Shakespeare Festival this summer as their front of the house manager. So it'll be great to welcome Tegan back. This next one is from Ellen Hedges, and it's that Kathleen Hedges, who grew up here at UUCIL, was married on May 9th, 2015. It was a wonderful wedding, and we actually have a card for her for you all to sign. It's on the back counter after the service comes to an end. And Ellen also wants to acknowledge thanks to UUCIL for all the support that she got when she had pneumonia. Carol Dickinson is very pleased that her mother, Jean, has moved from Arizona to live with her in Tracy. And our last is that Joyce Taylor had full hip replacement on Monday. She is home and she's doing well, and she will need help for about 6 to 8 weeks. So Elise is taking the name of volunteers who would be willing to help with food and transportation and that sort of thing. So please do be in touch with Elise. And we do have a card for Joyce on the back counter for after the service comes to an end. My spiritual companions, I would invite you to settle at this time into a deeper place. A place of honesty and compassion that is called by many different names in different cultures. Let us enter into prayer together. Spirit of life, God of many names, love that transcends our knowing and our ability to fully grasp it. We stand in your presence today. We come with joys on our hearts, with joys of milestones, weddings, anniversaries, birthdays, many different things that uplift us and carry us forward in this life. And we also come today with sorrows, with hardships, with illnesses. We come recovering. We come seeking peace and healing in this space. Let us remember that a joy that is shared here is increased, and a sorrow that is shared here lightens its burden. And we reach out to all of those beyond these walls, all of those who are struggling and hurting. We reach out to those who took advantage of Resource Day yesterday. We reach out to all of those in other cultures and other parts of the world who are struggling with poverty, maybe struggling with violence. Let us always remember that whatever good news we hear in this place, whatever good news we share with each other will mean so very little if we don't take its message beyond our walls and share that hope and good news with others. Let us, at this time, enter into a space of silence, contemplating how we might go forth and make our world just a little bit better. a community that cares for one another and that cares for this wider world. I give thanks today. Amen.
My blood doth rise in the roots of yon oak, her sap doth run in my veins. Thou bless my soul like the open sky, where the stars forever have lain. Where the stars forever have lain. My hands hold the weaving, my times on earth, my strength as dim as my sight, deep as the sea. My lost sounds of eternity. Blood of love's eternity. Feel the trumpets sound as they answer the words, rushing up the distant sound. Beneath my soul is the wind of my praise, and my love over the land. And my love blows over the land. My foot carries days of old into new. Our dreaming shows us the way. Wondrous our faith settles deep in the earth, rising green to bring a new day. Rising green, rising green to bring a new day.
This week I was given the wonderful privilege of being at St. Bartholomew's Episcopal Church. They are considering the transition to becoming a part of Integrity, which would mean issuing a public statement affirming the gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender community. In order to consider this move, they invited Horace Griffin, a professor of pastoral theology at the Pacific School of Religion, which is where I did my doctorate, to speak about the history of the GLBT movement in the churches. Members spoke about their own experiences of the issue of either being GLBT or having a family member who is. It was a deep and affirming dialogue. The conversation made me proud to be the minister here at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Livermore, which went through a similar process in the early 2000s. At the meeting, I was able to speak as the pastor of one of the only openly accepting churches in the Tri-Valley area. When I raised my hand to speak, I said that it felt like we were on holy ground with this conversation, that it was a conversation that mattered and that made a concrete difference to many people. I was able to speak about the number of people, of visitors, who have seen our rainbow flag or seen our welcoming status and showed up on Sunday because of that. In a context where many religious communities are not safe, they can be sure that we are. This coming week, on May 22nd, is Harvey Milk Day, celebrating the fallen leader of the gay rights movement. And so I spent time preparing by watching Milk, starring Sean Penn, and also reading Harvey Milk's writings. The film gives an appreciation for how much things have changed within the last generation. It starts by showing actual footage of police raids in gay bars. Police would flood into a bar and news crews would follow behind. People would be charged, their images shown, their names publicly released, and they would often lose their jobs and be ostracized from their families because of that. Harvey Milk had grown up in such a climate. He left his family's home in New York and moved to San Francisco, hoping to find a place that was more accepting. The film shows him at 40, lying in bed with his partner, saying that there was nothing he had done in his life that he was proud of. Milk had no idea what the next 10 years would entail for him. He started by opening a camera shop in the working-class Castro neighborhood in San Francisco. The business community told him right away that they would make sure that that store closed. They did not want his kind in the neighborhood. So Milk, instead of accepting defeat, got to organizing. He made one of the first lists of gay-friendly businesses and told the community only to shop there. This was so successful that in a few years, hostile businesses had to shutter their windows. More and more gay-friendly businesses moved in. It was at this time that Milk started to be called the mayor of Castro Street. But Milk was aware that being the mayor of Castro Street was in its own way ghettoizing. He wanted a wider influence beyond just the gay community. And so he ran for city supervisor. He lost twice, but on the third try, he became the first openly gay politician to be elected to public office. His election was a bright spot in an otherwise dark time in GLBT history. During the late 70s, Florida Orange Juice spokesperson Anita Bryant created a campaign to overturn an anti-discrimination ordinance in Dade County, Florida. It was called the Save Our Children campaign. A wave of anti-gay sentiment spread across the country. Laws in Wichita, Kansas, and Eugene, Oregon were repealed that would have protected the GLBT community. Emboldened by these efforts, Bryant took her show on the road. Other evangelicals joined in. New measures were introduced, such as one to fire all gay and lesbian teachers immediately. That measure was introduced in California and was called Proposition 6. Harvey Milk had both been dreading the moment that kind of effort would come to California, and he was also looking forward to it. He viewed it as an opportunity to mobilize enough people to prove to the nation that these laws were not inevitable. It was during this fight that Milk came up with his major strategy for the gay rights movement going forward. He said that GLBT people had to come out. They had to tell their coworkers and their families and their friends. He all but required this of his campaign workers. His reasoning was based on statistics. People who knew even one gay or lesbian person were less likely to vote for anti-gay measures by a margin of 2 to 1. Those numbers were almost flipped for people who did not know a single gay or lesbian person. So this is part of the reason National Coming Out Day is celebrated. It's not only about the personal freedom of telling one's own truth, it's also about demystifying the GLBT community and building relationships that will sustain justice. It's about planting a seed that will bear virtuous fruits in unexpected ways. These seeds still need to be planted. I find that with a sermon on this subject, I can't set aside my own personal experience, which has been so shaped by the strength and the harsh realities of being gay in America. The same harsh realities that affected Harvey Milk were very much alive in Cincinnati when I was a teenager. Article 12, an effort to remove all anti-discrimination protection for GLBT people, was passed in 1993. I knew friends who were fired for being gay, and I knew which apartments would refuse to rent to me and my partner. Despite that, in so many ways, I was blessed. My parents accepted me wholeheartedly when I came out at 14. They were worried about the hardships I would face, but they supported me. The first group that I came out to was my Unitarian Universalist youth group. They also accepted me and loved me for who I am. Not many gay people can say that both their families and their churches were that accepting, and for that reason, I count myself one of the lucky ones. My husband was not so lucky. His family attended a Pentecostal church that often preached on the sinfulness of homosexuality. He grew up knowing who he was and told himself that he just had to survive long enough to escape. But his stepfather, an abusive and violent man, started to suspect that Jason might be gay when he was 17. And so one night, at 17, his stepfather came into Jason's room and asked him if he remembered the shotgun on the wall in his bedroom. Jason replied that he did. His stepfather told him that he was saving the bullets for him should he ever tell anyone that he is gay. Jason's heart was racing as he filled a backpack with clothes. He slipped out the window that night and never looked back, nor did his family ever reach out to him. When my husband died in an accident in 2007, not a single member of his family showed up for the funeral. Now, I could choose to be bitter about that, but mostly I'm just sad for them for missing out on the wonderful person that Jason became. I believe that they created their own personal hell and they chose to live in it. I just hope that one day their hearts can change and they can find healing. Harvey Milk is an inspiration to me, partly because he did not choose to live in bitterness and cynicism. Instead, he chose to make a difference, During the Proposition 6 fight, he mobilized his community to start coming out to their families. He began to form coalitions with other people who were fighting for justice. He also, and this is particularly inspiring, went into some of the most hateful and prejudiced places in order to publicly debate Anita Bryant's colleagues. I get an anxious pit in my stomach when I consider doing that, and I have a lot of respect for Milk's tenacity. As much as I admire that heroic activism, I think that the world is changed in much smaller gestures. In the passage from the Gospel of Mark that we read this morning, it says, if someone would scatter seed on the ground and would sleep and rise night and day, the seed would sprout and grow. The earth produces of itself first the blade, then the ear, then the full corn in the ear. When the grain is ripe, the harvest has come. My interpretation of this passage is that once you plant a seed, even a very tiny little seed, it starts to grow beyond what you can control. You can sleep and rise night and day, but that seed is going to keep growing no matter what you do. I think about justice and kindness and compassion as growing in that way. We each have the power to plant those little seeds that may grow into something beautiful beyond our expectations. Harvey Milk did not make it. He was shot by Dan White, who was then sentenced to 5 years in prison. Many look at it as a homophobic and unjust ruling. But the seeds that Harvey Milk planted continued to grow. He laid the groundwork for future activism, and I think it is no exaggeration to say that he saved thousands of lives through his work. We never know what is going to take hold and grow. We never know what is going to make all of the difference to someone. At the meeting this week at the Episcopal Church, one member shared that she was a teacher and that the issue of GLBT rights were dear to her. Once, she was the chaperone for a senior high prom, and this was way back in the late 80s. 2 male students saw her name on the list and came to her and asked if they would be able to go together. She said that she decided in that moment to take her stand, and she told them yes. She would accept whatever flack came her way over the decision. She just knew it was the right thing to do. Horace Griffin, who was facilitating the conversation, smiled, and he said to her, "And you could very well have saved their lives by doing that." It is in those small acts of heroism, those tiny seeds that we plant, that we can transform our world into a more just and loving place. My spiritual companions, may we go forth and do likewise. Amen. I love you, and blessings on your journey.
soul. Mend a heart. Bring together lives that have been torn apart. Share the joy. Share the joy. Find a friend. Find a friend. It's a never-ending gift that circles back again. This is why we sing, why we lift our voice, why we stand as one in harmony. This is why we sing, why we lift our voice. Take my hand and sing with me. Music builds a bridge. It can tear down a wall. Music is a language that can speak to one and all. This is why we sing, why we lift our voice, why we stand as one in harmony. This is why we sing, why we lift our voice. Take my hand and sing with me. This is why we
At this time, as the ushers pass among us, I would invite us to give generously to the work that this church continues to do in this community, all the work for love and justice that it carries forward. And if you are here for the first or second time, I would ask that you let the basket pass you by. You are our guest today. for all of the gifts of time and talent and also of financial resources that go into sustaining this beloved community. I give thanks today. Let us sing this next song with heart. It is number 1014. Please rise as you are willing and able.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we hold in our hearts until we are together again.
My spiritual companions, I leave us with some words from the poet Adrienne Rich. I am moved by all I cannot save. So much in this world has been destroyed. I have to cast my lot with those who, age after age, perversely and with no extraordinary power, choose to reconstitute the world. May we go forth and choose to reconstitute the world. Amen, and blessed be. So we are going to enjoy our potluck now. If you can help move the chairs out of the way and get the table set up, that would be fantastic. So please rise and greet someone who may be unfamiliar to you today.